What if a simple night out, something as ordinary as grabbing drinks with friends, suddenly turned deadly? How quickly can a moment of celebration become a tragedy that ripples through an entire community? Imagine an uptown Minneapolis bar in April 2022. The air is thick with music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Friends gather to unwind, strangers share stories, and for a while, the world outside seems far away. But beneath the surface, tension lingers. Unseen, unspoken, but very real. In an instant, a simple accident, a spilled drink, sets off a chain reaction. No one in the bar expects that a minor mishap could ignite something so dangerous. But sometimes, it's the smallest spark that lights the biggest fire. Voices are raised, tempers flare. What began as a minor accident quickly escalates into a heated argument. The energy in the room shifts from festive to volatile. Suddenly fists fly, chairs scrape, and chaos erupts. Within moments, the situation spirals out of control, ending in a violent brawl and, ultimately, a fatal shooting. But this wasn't just a random bar fight. Underneath the shouting and shoving, deep gang rivalries had been simmering for years. Old grudges and territorial disputes, invisible to most, were waiting for any excuse to explode. The spilled drink was merely the trigger. The real fuel was years of animosity and unresolved conflict between rival gangs. In that moment, all it took was a single spark to unleash violence that had been building for far too long. In a matter of seconds, a man lay dead, another was rushed to the hospital, and the entire neighborhood was left reeling in shock. The aftermath was immediate and devastating, leaving families and friends to grapple with loss and fear. The incident shattered the illusion of safety that many residents held. It was a stark reminder that gang violence isn't confined to dark alleys or abandoned lots. It can erupt anywhere, even in places meant for joy and connection. That night forced Minneapolis to confront a harsh reality. No neighborhood, no matter how vibrant or welcoming, is immune when street wars spill into public life. The city was left to reckon with the consequences, questioning how such violence could happen so close to home. What happened inside that bar would not be forgotten. The tragedy sparked a major federal investigation and set the stage for a landmark legal case, one that would challenge the city's approach to gang violence and justice, and leave a lasting mark on everyone involved. It began with a bump, an almost imperceptible collision in the thick, humid air of a packed Minneapolis bar, the kind of moment that, on any other night, might have passed unnoticed, lost in the noise and laughter. But tonight, a spilled drink wasn't just an awkward accident. It was a spark, a catalyst, the first domino in a chain reaction that no one could stop. The liquid splashed across the counter, seeping into the cracks, as if marking the beginning of something far more sinister. These weren't just ordinary bar patrons. On one side, members of the Minneapolis Bloods, their eyes cold and calculating. On the other, a rival gang, equally hardened, equally unwilling to show weakness. The tension between them was palpable, a silent war simmering beneath the surface. What should have been a simple apology turned into a standoff. Words were exchanged, but not the kind that heal wounds. Instead, threats and insults flew, each one stoking the fire, each one daring the other side to make the next move. For these men, backing down wasn't just unthinkable, it was forbidden. In their world, respect was everything, and any sign of weakness could be fatal. The code of the street demanded retaliation, demanded that pride be defended at all costs. The argument grew louder, drawing the attention of everyone in the bar. Conversation stopped, glasses paused mid-air. As the crowd sensed the shift in atmosphere, the air crackled with anticipation, every eye fixed on the brewing storm. Suddenly, words gave way to shoves. A chair scraped back, fists clenched, and then the first punch was thrown. In an instant, chaos erupted. The bar, once filled with music and laughter, was now a battleground, bodies colliding in a violent frenzy. This wasn't just a random scuffle. It was a public declaration of war between two factions, each determined to prove their dominance. The violence spread like wildfire, pulling in anyone nearby, friend or foe. The spilled drink was long forgotten. Now it was about pride, about territory, about the unspoken rules that governed their lives. The gang code demanded blood, and neither side was willing to back down. Tables overturned, glass shattered, and the sounds of violence echoed through the room. The bar was transformed into a war zone, and the violence was only escalating. Terrified patrons scrambled for safety, ducking behind tables, rushing for the exits, desperate to escape the chaos. Some screamed, others froze, paralyzed by fear as the fight raged on. In those frantic moments, the conflict was no longer about a spilled drink, it was about survival. Every second felt like an eternity as people searched for cover, praying the violence wouldn't find them, and as blood began to stain the floor, it became clear, this was only the beginning. The spark had ignited the inferno, and the night was about to turn deadly. The brawl inside the bar escalated fast, fists, then knives, then panic. Screams filled the air as patrons fled, tables overturned in the chaos. 5 men were at the center, violence radiating outward. The fight spilled into the street where the final act played out. A gun was drawn, shots rang out, echoing through the night. One rival gang member fell, mortally wounded, another was hospitalized. The street, once lively, was now a crime scene. The violence had left a permanent scar on the neighborhood. A simple night out had become a symbol of the city's struggle with gang warfare. The sense of safety was shattered. Minneapolis would never see Uptown the same way again. At the center of this violence was Deshaun James Solomon, a man who went by the name Black. In the world of Minneapolis street gangs, his name carried a weight that few could ignore. To some, he was a myth, an enforcer whose reputation stretched far beyond his own neighborhood. To others, he was a living reminder of the dangers lurking in the city's shadows. At just 34 years old, Solomon had already risen to become a leader in the Minneapolis Bloods. His reputation was built not just on intimidation but on a history of violence that left a trail of fear in its wake. Those who crossed him rarely forgot the encounter. He was known for his ability to command respect and for the way he could turn a simple disagreement into a dangerous confrontation. On the night in question, Solomon's presence at the bar was no accident. He was a key player in the unfolding drama, and everyone in the room seemed to sense it. His actions carried weight, and his reputation preceded him. The atmosphere was tense, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. This wasn't his first deadly encounter. 2 years earlier, Solomon had been involved in another fatal gang shooting at a nightclub, an incident that left the city shaken, and law enforcement scrambling for answers. The echoes of that night still haunted the community, a grim reminder of how quickly violence could erupt. For Solomon, public places often became stages for gang retribution. Bars, clubs, and city streets were transformed into battlegrounds where old scores were settled and new rivalries began. His pattern was clear. Wherever he went, trouble seemed to follow, and innocent bystanders were often caught in the crossfire. By the time of the Uptown shooting, Solomon was already serving a long sentence for the earlier murder. But even behind bars, his influence lingered. The federal investigation that followed put him at the center of a much larger effort to dismantle the gang networks that fueled the violence. For law enforcement, Solomon wasn't just another suspect. He had become the face of a cycle of violence they were determined to break. Detectives and officers pored over case files determined to bring an end to the bloodshed that had plagued their city for years. Solomon's arrest marked a turning point in the fight against gang violence in Minneapolis. It sent a message to the community, and to other gang leaders, that no one was untouchable, and that the cycle of violence could at last be broken. The Uptown bar fight was just one flashpoint in a citywide surge of violence. Between 2020 and 2022, Minneapolis saw shootings and murders spike, driven by gang rivalries. No longer confined to back alleys, violence erupted in public, nightclubs, restaurants, even busy streets. The Bloods, Solomon's gang, were at the center of this storm, locked in endless cycles of retaliation. Residents felt trapped, businesses suffered, and fear spread. Law enforcement struggled to keep up as violence moved unpredictably across neighborhoods. The city faced a public safety crisis, and the Uptown shooting was a wake-up call. It was clear bold action was needed to reclaim the streets. The community demanded change. After the shooting, Uptown was gripped by shock and fear. Police lights replaced nightlife, yellow tape marked the new reality. Residents asked, how did this happen here? The randomness of the violence was terrifying, no one felt safe. Calls for more police and better security grew louder. Detectives quickly identified Solomon, his gang ties making him a prime suspect. But this was bigger than one murder. It was about dismantling a criminal network. Federal authorities joined the case, shifting the focus to organized crime. The investigation became a federal racketeering probe, targeting the Bloods' leadership. The stakes had never been higher for Minneapolis. The city braced for a major legal battle. The investigation led to a groundbreaking move. Federal prosecutors used the RICO Act to target the Bloods as a criminal enterprise. Deshaun Solomon and his associates now face charges for years of violence, not just a single murder. The indictment detailed a pattern of intimidation, shootings, and murder, with Solomon at the center. This was the first RICO case against the Bloods in Minneapolis, a clear message from the feds. In October 2024, Solomon was convicted of RICO conspiracy and 2 counts of using a firearm in murder. His associate, Michael Burrell, was also convicted for his role in the earlier nightclub killing. The trial exposed the gang's inner workings and set a powerful precedent. Law enforcement had struck a major blow against organized crime. In May 2025, Deshaun Solomon faced sentencing. Judge Susan Nelson called him a threat to public safety, citing his lack of remorse. Solomon received life in federal prison plus 20 years, on top of his existing state sentence. His associate, Michael Burrell, got 25 years for the nightclub murder. The sentences sent a clear warning. Gang violence would be met with the harshest penalties. The FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office declared their intent to dismantle violent gangs citywide. For victims' families, it was justice, though the pain remained. For Minneapolis, it was a turning point in the fight against gang violence. Judge Nelson hoped the sentence would deter others from following the same path. A chapter of violence had closed, but the work was far from over. The Solomon case is a stark reminder of how quickly tragedy can strike. It shows that public safety is fragile and gang violence can erupt anywhere. The RICO prosecution offers hope, but real change requires more than arrests. Poverty, lack of opportunity, and social isolation fuel the cycle. Solutions must go deeper. True safety demands community outreach, social programs, and alternatives to gang life. Law enforcement can disrupt violence, but healing takes everyone. The memory of a life lost over a spilled drink should drive us to build safer, stronger communities. Minneapolis's future depends on both strong enforcement and compassionate action.